Okay, YouTube is not going to get all the information that Instagram just got. If y'all are on my Instagram, find this video so you can catch the first few minutes because I've been talking and didn't hit the play button for the YouTube folks. um, we are on the Kybalion. And so let me get started with the notes that I have. So to begin with, it was put together, it was written by a person called Hermes Trismegistus. He's also known as the scribe of the gods in ancient Egypt. He was um, alive and in action in the infancy of humanity, according to the Kybalion. It is, and he's said to have been a teacher of the prophet Abraham. Okay, when the prophets ended up in Egypt studying Jesus, Abraham, and others, they studied from the Egyptians. Okay, um, someone made the statement in my presence recently that, Egypt was the Holy Land. It was probably Oheneba. Thank you, sir. You do wonderful work. Um, at the time of the prophets in the Bible, Egypt was the promised land. They all ended up there doing trade or escaping persecution or whatever else was going on in their lives at the time. It was a center of learning. It was the center of civilization. And so the information that we have today evolved from what was there being taught to the people. And not just anybody. This was privileged information, and I'll give that in the explanation as I continue going on from my notes. Okay, so Hermes Trismegistus was said to have been a teacher of Prophet Abraham. He was the great central sun of occultism, SUN. The central sun of occultism, like the sun is the center of our solar system. Okay. Beliefs and practices which fall outside of, okay, the definition of occultism: beliefs and practices which fall outside of religion and science, such as supernatural happenings, mystical happenings, magic, or phenomena that can't be explained through our regular senses. Give you the example: having visitations by spirits, people who have crossed to the other side of the veil, being able to be in contact with people after they have died. Um, Not everybody has that ability, but a lot of us feel the presence, at least feel the presence of our loved ones because we can recognize them, in our heart space, usually heart and mind space. Some people can actually see, the energies, the auric bodies, etheric bodies of the people who are coming into being present. There is a guy, what is his name? I can't think of his name right now, but he is a medium to the stars mostly. Um, but he himself is in touch with spirits. He can communicate what they want to, the messages that they want to deliver to their loved ones and people associated with their loved ones. He's a very young guy, and he's been at it since the age of 11, I believe. But anyway, so occultism having to do with, as I said, talking to people from across the veil, downloads that some people receive from the unseen. They get information, you know, they're able to perceive, they're able to think, to feel information about people and circumstances that they had no background on before. You know, their third eye is open. They're able to receive these messages, receive these interpretations of the characteristics, the past, the future tendencies of the people, you know, who are sitting in front of them. Having connections with spirit, having a close relationship, much like Abraham with God. He was considered the friend of God. I believe it was him. Out of all the prophets from the Islamic standpoint, he was considered the friend of God because they had direct communication between them. Other examples are telekinesis, astral travel, energy transfer, psychic tethers, or soul ties. Okay? When you have a mental connection between yourself and someone else who is on this side of the veil, and you're able to feel their feelings or think their thoughts, or at least know that they're thinking of you at a particular time. Okay, if someone is heavy on your mind and then within a few minutes they're calling you, there's a connection there. Okay. Hermes was an influencer of many ancient teachings across the globe. Okay, his teachings clarified or reconciled contradictory information based on humankind's misunderstandings or misguided beliefs about how things are and why things are, you know, the way that life unfolds, the reason behind it, and how it actually happens. I hope that's clear. When you're doing comparative studies, much like comparative religions, if you're if you have studied different religions, you'll see common threads among them. And those common threads usually lead back to the teachings of Hermes. That's basically what it is. Okay, a few people from each age, how the information was passed down. Hermes' students were few compared to the greater society that he was functioning in. The people who were able to understand the information, excuse me, understand the information properly and master it were the ones who were pulled in to be his students. And their students from there had the same inclination to only teach what they knew to a handful of people who could really grasp it and use it effectively. Not for material gains, not for, not to overpower anyone, you know, who didn't have that information. Excuse me. Okay, so few people from each age preserved the teachings and only taught who they felt could understand it properly. All the information is not for everybody. And we get that understanding, ha ha ha. Okay, first of all, I'm going to reference Zeitgeist the movie again. Zeitgeist the movie, it is available on YouTube, and it talks about the definition of an age. Okay, that it's based in the 12 signs of the zodiac, and how I think at Jesus's time, that was the time of Pisces, and we move backwards in the zodiac. So now we're entering the age of Aquarius. People have been talking about that. The Fifth Dimension singing group talked about that some years ago. But that is basically the definition of an age, and it's explained very well in Zeitgeist the movie. So go ahead and expose yourself to that. Also, the fact that not all information is for everybody. Um, I am referencing right now the movie Wakanda Forever. If you have been dragging your feet to see this movie, shame on you. Get in there and watch it now. There is a lot to be seen, a lot to be learned. I think they did an excellent job, you know, um, carrying the storyline forward. Okay. But specifically, Queen Ramonda spoke early on in the movie about why, for example, the Wakandans were not forthcoming with sharing vibranium with other people. And to prove her point, why it was not a benefit to do so, the warmongering um, that had the potential of taking place before she went to this conference and ended up talking about that, because after, a little spoiler alert, after the death of Prince T'Challa, King T'Challa, excuse me, they thought Wakanda was weak, specifically the French, sent mercenaries in to try to steal vibranium from the Wakandans, separate from the previous movie where Augustus Claw, was the one who um, invaded the territory and committed the theft. Well, um, Queen Ramonda, she brought those mercenaries to this meeting with the aid of the Dora Milaje, and proved her point that the world was not ready to have vibranium in their hands. So using that as like a metaphor to what we're talking about right now, this specialized information, it's not for the understanding, the grasp of just every and anybody. And the reference was put in there, not casting your pearls before swine, which we often hear out of the teachings of Christianity. That was a term that was actually used by the Egyptians many generations before. Okay, so let me restate some things. Hermes has many names, and his focus was in occult teachings, things that were not covered by religion and science, things of your other senses, your extra senses, the clairs in particular. And he was an influencer, even to this day, of many of the living and dead religions that have come forth through humanity. All right, there's a poem that was referenced in the Kybalion that said, "Oh, let not the flame die out." And this was referring to passing on the information from age to age, from generation to generation. "Oh, let not the flame die out, cherished age after age in its dark cavern, in its holy temples cherished, fed by pure ministers of love, let not the flame die out." So even with the understanding that the people who held that information were persecuted, one, because they were secretive about it, and two, because it went against what other people in the society wanted people to be thinking about. Okay, the programming of the day. um, Let me get on to Mark chapter 12, verses 30 and 31. Say, and this is out of the Bible, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. Okay. The The verse before that actually spoke about presenting your body as a living sacrifice in the propagation of the beliefs. So presenting your body, recognizing that you and how God created you was perfect to do the job that he put you here to do. Okay? Whatever your talents are, whatever abilities you have, um, you were made perfectly by him to conduct that business while you're here. Okay? And the second verse is talking about the relationship that you should have with the Most High, with the universe, with Jesus. Um, a loving relationship cultivated in the heart, moving. When I see the word soul, I think emotions. Okay, so let me go back to the quote. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength. So basically with your whole being, physical and non-physical. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. So those two commandments that were given by Jesus should be enough if you wrap your mind around it efficiently enough and conduct yourself consistently in that vein. You should be in alignment with what God has as a plan for your life. Okay, it's a simple message, but people want to complicate it. So then we get into people's interpretations based on their life experiences, and they want to share that with everybody and have them follow along with that. But not everybody's experience is going to be the same. Okay. Next in my notes, I got similar to the two students who approached the master teacher in The Alchemist. Yes. Okay. If you've read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, there are two students who approach a master teacher. One of the students, the master sends off to do some more study. He wasn't ready to receive the knowledge that the master had. And the second student, he taught the information that he had because he recognized that this person was ready. Okay, so back to the understanding that it's specialized knowledge for people who can handle it. And the spirit of persecution has not yet died out in the land. Okay, that was an understanding early on. So it wasn't just Jesus and other prophets who suffered persecution. If anyone came through who had a different understanding, a different lesson from what usually the leadership was okay with you learning, then you were putting yourself in a position to be put to death for your beliefs, for your thoughts, for that type of information. Hold on a second. I got a note here. And I apologize if this seems like rambling, but it's all important. Okay. The first bookmark is in reference to the teachers of the knowledge, the ones who passed it down from age to age. And it says directly from the Kybalion, these men, the person who wrote this book interpreting the information, these men have never sought popular approval or numbers of followers. They are indifferent to these things. They are indifferent to these things, for they know how few there are in each generation who are ready for the truth or who would recognize it if it were presented to them. They reserve the strong meat for men, while others furnish the milk for babes. And those are two more references from the Bible that originated in Egypt. They reserve their pearls of wisdom for the few elect who recognize their value and who wear them in their crowns instead of casting them before the materialistic, vulgar swine. Okay, so that's the pearls before swine statement. Who would trample them in the mud and mix them with their disgusting mental food. That is what I wanted to focus on a little bit because, when humans are left to interpret things for themselves, sometimes their understanding goes askew from the original lesson. Or they have their agendas which dictate how they teach the information. Okay, turning it into disgusting mental food. I tell you, once your eyes get opened and you start to see the mental acrobatics that were conducted in order to keep people outside of the understanding of their personal power, it really it makes a difference. Like when Morpheus offered the red pill versus the blue pill. Once you take that pill, you can't come back. Okay, you can't unsee what you've seen, and it has a tendency to disappoint. You know why people teach you things the way that why people teach you things that they teach you, knowing that they don't want you to strive more than what they're striving. They don't want you to be successful more than what they consider to be successful. They don't want you to surpass them in any way, is the reason why they teach things the way that they teach them, in a way that hobbles your mind. Okay? Most programming that we've been given is in the interest of putting a ceiling on what we feel we can strive for, putting a ceiling on what we feel we're capable of, what we feel that we can bring into being. But if you look across the world, the outliers, the people who excel far beyond other people, is because they don't have those same mental shackles. They were not programmed, or despite their programming, they reached past and were able to advance themselves greatly, more than other people who are stuck in the programming. Okay, let me keep going. So keep it simple. Establish your relationship with the Most High and cultivate it. Learn how to use the talents, the powers that we were put here with in order to better our lives. Let me keep going. Backtracked on my notes. And how much time do I have right now? Okay, we're only about 24 minutes in. A little bit more for the Instagram folks. Okay. And not just people's agendas. The reason for scorning and revilement of people with specialized knowledge is usually based in jealousies and envies. That is something you really can't fathom. Sometimes people just don't like you and they don't know why. You don't have much, but still they're jealous of you. Don't have no understanding for that. There is a situation that happened. There's a crime that happened recently. And it's not the first time that this type of crime has happened, where a young lady was murdered by her friends who were jealous of her accomplishments. She was a businesswoman. Um, and she was able to, have nice things by her own hands. But these people that she thought were her friends, particularly her best friend, was involved in murdering her. Anyway, be careful of the company you keep. A lot of these people, I'm sure, were hermits in their time period. Okay, so that's pretty much what the introduction was talking about. We're going to get off into chapter 1 now. And it starts off with the quote, "The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding." So we're talking about them having been selective about the students that they ended up teaching. And the writer said, the wisdoms that are in the Kybalion, the 7 Hermetic principles, were the evidence of it can be found in places like India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece, Rome, and other societies. As I was saying before, that common thread, if you do cross-religious studies, you'll see the common thread, and it leads back to this information from Hermes. That's a bit repetitive. I'm not going to go through that one again. Alrighty. Some more names of Hermes. He was known as the Master of Masters, and it is said that if he was indeed a man, he was foremost in his knowledge. Right here, I'm going to reference the Emerald Tablets, because the Emerald Tablets refers to Hermes under the name of Thoth. And it's more of a narrative of how his life unfolded and what he did in the course of his three manifestations. He was also known as the father of occult wisdom, the founder of astrology, and the discoverer of alchemy. Okay. He is said to have predated Moses, and he lived 300 years. It is said that the Egyptians deified him as the god Thoth, who was known as the scribe of the gods, and that the Greeks called him Hermes, the god of wisdom, which is the same as, the understanding of him that the Egyptians had. He was, he was a very, very knowledgeable person. And the reason why we have the term hermetically sealed is because of his name, referencing secret knowledge, referencing something that has been sealed, which means nothing can come out, nothing can escape. You can't easily get to what is being held within. Okay, referencing once again how he and his students were very selective about teaching other people. And I already said the term milk for babes and meat for strong men, which is usually seen in Christian scriptures, came out of Egypt. And the ancient masters, the people who learned from Hermes and the people who learned from them, warned against making these teachings into a solidified creed, okay, making it like into a religion. And that is because over time things get corrupted because, once again, people's intentions behind how they teach what they teach, wanting material gains. It was said, let's see, the ancient occultism of India and Persia degenerated and was largely lost owing to the fact that the teachers became priests and so mixed theology with the philosophy. The result being that the occultism of India and Persia has been gradually lost amidst the mass of religious superstition, cults, creeds, and gods. So it was with ancient Greece and Rome. So it was with Hermetic teachings of the Gnostics and early Christians, which were lost at the time of Constantine. Here, at the time of Constantine. Okay, the time of Constantine, whose iron hand smothered philosophy with the blanket of theology, losing to the Christian church that which was its very essence and spirit, and causing it to grope through several centuries before it found the way back to its ancient faith. The indications apparent to all careful observers in this 20th century being that the church is now struggling to get back to its ancient mystic teachings. Let me refer you back to, I found the name of the movie. Okay, talking about Hypatia. Hypatia was a Roman woman. She was a mathematician. She was a philosopher. She was an astronomer. At the time when Rome was switching over from their many gods to one Christian God. Okay? The movie is called Agora, Agora. And it gives like a cultural background of what was going on with people who were scholars and how the way things were taught was changed because it was switched over from being able to discuss philosophy and other subjects to being essentially smothered by theology. If you don't believe in this way, if you don't conduct yourself in this way, if you don't, you know, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, the way that we tell you to do it, we're going to kill you off. Essentially, human nature doesn't change. It does not change. One more thing, because I referenced Hypatia and this movie in a previous video. It was not the same lady who played the Borg Queen in Star Trek who played Hypatia. There was two different people. They look like they could be related, but that might just be me. So if you remember that reference that I made previously to Hypatia, the movie is called Agora. As I said, Agora. Go out and watch it. Is a cultural reference, and that's what happened at the time. So they kept the teaching. Keep in mind, they kept the teachings secret for the most part, and they did not want it to be turned into doctrine. Because then it was locking down something that was supposed to be vast, multifaceted, and fluid. This is my interpretation, okay? So for the longest time, the teachings of Hermes was passed down verbally from mouth to ear. And whenever anything was written down, it was veiled in terms of alchemy and astrology. Think of how much of the Bible and other Holy Scriptures deal a lot in parables. Okay, you don't get the straight story. This is what you're supposed to be thinking about. This is, the main crux of the story. They give you imagery, and you're supposed to pull out the understanding from the imagery from the parables. So alchemy terms and astrology terms were used in passing down this information. So if you weren't privy to the understanding of how alchemy was supposed to work, if you weren't privy to the understanding of how astrology related to how time ran and human life cycles, then you would be locked out to much of the information that they had to give. And the reason why they veiled it in this way, it was to avoid persecution, to avoid persecution from the religious folk. And right here, I'm going to refer you once again to Zeitgeist, the movie, available on YouTube. It talks about a lot of this other stuff, the understanding of astrology and human life cycles, and why things were happening in the way that they were happening. Yeah, I wrote down here, God's knowledge is too vast to be locked down and minimized. Okay. And that's pretty much how we ended up with the infinity sign. A circle twisted in a way that, it referenced seasons, it referenced cycles. I had a friend tell me recently, so I had to order the book by Dr. Or the author, Layla O. Africa. Let me see if I can get the name for this thing right quick. African Holistic Health was the name of his book. It was very popular back in the 80s, if I remember. But he used a clock to describe human life cycles, and he even used it like to interpret health issues by way of the face. Certain parts of the body are connected and show illness in other parts of the body. This is like reflexology. And so, it's all connected in one way or another. That's another book that you can get. I did come across it back in the day, but I didn't get off into it like I'm planning on doing soon. The African Holistic Health by Layla O. Africa. So, okay, so let's see. Axioms, maxims, and precepts was how the Hermetic teachings were laid out, how they were taught. Basic sayings that once you have the proper understanding, you could interpret it deeper and deeper for yourself. But you had to have the specialized knowledge. And let's see, the art of Hermetic alchemy is how it was described. And if you understand alchemy, it's not material. Alchemy is not based in material. I mean, when I first heard of the word, it was referencing turning lead into gold. Okay, basically impossible. So with the proper understanding, and I'll show you that in a minute, it's turning something basic and mundane into something highly valued and rare. That's what alchemy is. Being able to turn something basic into something highly valued and rare. It's the mastery of mental forces. Once you're able to understand that much of what we were given was based in interpreting mental powers, then you understand the direction that we're supposed to be going in. Right here, I'm going to reference the book Psycho-Cybernetics. Okay, that book helps with shadow work. Okay, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. It is finally in an audiobook, which is thoroughly helpful. You can rewind and re-listen to chapter by chapter as you're driving if you have a long commute or if you're just out and about doing stuff. Okay, so the first, oh yeah, we're in chapter 1 now. Forgot to say that. Or did I? We are in chapter 1. This whole process is about the mastery of mental forces, not material things. The transmutation of one kind of mental vibration into other types of mental vibrations. And I'm referencing Romans 12, verse 2, which says, and be not conformed to this world. Like, don't be materially focused, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. It's a mental process. Okay. It doesn't say that directly, but coming out of the Egyptian understanding, the renewing of your mind is the beginning. Once you realize it's a mental process, you can take off from there. So be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to, think. This is that human intentions coming into play that could potentially mess things up. You know, I have to be higher than you. I have to be more knowledgeable than you, so I'm going to conduct myself in this way. Don't be like that. It says, but to think soberly, and read that as without ego. Think without your ego, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. God has given each person their measured talent, their measured ability, their job to do while they're here. Okay? So everybody's here to do their job. Nobody's better, essentially, than anybody else in faith. And, it's back to the love your neighbor as you love yourself in the process of conducting the program that God put you here for. And with that, let me see if there was another tag. I believe there was. Yep, right there. At the end of chapter 1, it says, when the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. And it says, so that according to the teachings, the passage of this book to those ready for the instruction will attract the attention of such as are prepared to receive the teaching. And likewise, when the pupil is ready to receive the truth, then will this little book come to him or her. Such is the law. The Hermetic principle of cause and effect, we'll get to that later, in its aspect of the law of attraction, will bring lips and ear together, pupil and book in company. So mote it be. Okay. I guess that's not just a witchy statement, but yeah, that's the introduction and chapter 1. So I'm going to end it here. Put my paper clip in these notes. If you have any commentary, leave it at the bottom. I'm learning, so I'm teaching, so I can grasp the knowledge better. I hope you were able to follow along and understand. If not, this may not be your time, and you can find another channel to gain your studies from. Not all information is for everybody, and I'm going to leave it there. But if you've only met this channel, I have another channel. It is called Pull Your Power Back on both YouTube and Instagram. I also have a book available on Amazon. I posted it on my Instagram pages for people pleasers, which is what I originally started the Pull Your Power Back channel to discuss. It is now in book form, so you can carry it around and reference it at will. What else? That's it. I'm enjoying myself. I was inspired. I had my notes ready, and I had taken a couple weeks off organizing myself, but I believe I'm back on it now. As long as I get these videos done on Sunday or Monday, I'm good. Too many things tend to happen later on in the week, but be well. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you again soon.